afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our, is this the first one of 2024? Our first regional listening session of 2024. We're here at Agua Caliente on the homelands of the Cahuilla people. Something that we have started doing in our, pretty much since I came back from being in other countries where they do a lot more stuff on Indigenous peoples is we try to acknowledge the people of the land by at least saying hello in the language of the land. So here, it's Miahuen.
There you go.
If you're in the mountains, it's apparently Miahue. So if there's arguments, take it up with Robert.
Bring it up. Me and Sean, we'll fix it.
So Miahuen, everybody.
You go.
Good afternoon. Set Cahuilla, that's in my language. Mihilakawana. I'm Christina Snider-Ashtari. I'm Mihilakawana and Makamo, which means people of the West Water and people of the Salmon Hole, and my people are from Sonoma County, California. I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Indians. I currently serve as the Governor's Tribal Affairs Secretary, and in that capacity, I help oversee and administer the Truth in Healing Council process, which we're here to kind of talk about today, but also listen for the most part today. Before we get started, I wanted to thank Agua Caliente for providing this beautiful space. We've got some beautiful weather today, but our office has flagged that there is going to be some wet weather in the next few days, so please take care of yourselves, and if we get any updates, we'll give them to you in real time. If you need help in the next few days too, let us know, or if you hear of anybody who needs help, we'll direct our Office of OES, Emergency Services, in order to help people out, because we want to make sure that everybody's getting what they need and that everybody is staying safe. And we know that the floods here can get pretty dangerous, especially when it's this much. Today we're here for a regional hearing or a listening session, and really what we do is travel throughout the state. This is our last year-ish of traveling out throughout the state to hear from community and really hear about the experiences of California Native people, understand the story from California Native perspective of what happened to your people with the onset of settlement, particularly and specifically the state of California. But if there are things that predated that the state of California incorporated or didn't help with or made worse once it came into statehood, those are things that the Truth in Healing Council is hoping to hear about and hoping to flesh out in its report that will come out next year. The Truth in Healing Council is tasked with reframing the narrative of California, reframing the history of what it means to be Californian. So instead of starting when the gold rush happened and then all of the settler colonists and extractive gold rush people came and basically genocide and massacre and land dispossession happened for Native people, going much further back and saying, what is the experience of this place? What's the history of this place and the people of this place? And how does that, and really making it a more holistic history. So not just, a line about the people that used to be here with no continuity, but really saying this land and these people have this long, rich history, culture, vibrant communities, and what happened when these events happened where outsiders came in and started kind of messing things up. So Truth in Healing Council stems out of the apology by Governor Gavin Newsom in 2019. And is really the state's effort to try to meet California Native people where they're at, and to and to place kind of the pen in California Native people's hands, or even just give a spotlight and highlight to the voice of California Native people, understanding that nobody has ever stopped telling the story, but that now the state is creating a space for people to listen, and the governor, as an ally, is shining that light directly on California Native people with the idea that this process can't be done in like 5 years. It's an ongoing process that's gonna need to happen over time, over and over, until we get to the place where Native people aren't having to tell our own stories, explain our own things to other people, because everyone will just understand what it means to be California Indian, what it means to be your specific tribe or origin or the place that you're from. And our kids won't have to go into school feeling like they need to hide parts of themselves, or that they have to be some sort of social justice warrior in order to survive a society that doesn't always account for Native people. What's really cool about being here is that we know that this tribe has actually worked with the local community and school district to incorporate their history and culture into the curriculum. And so maybe we can hear a little bit about that. If not, you can also Google it. It's very cool, and is a real model of how a lot of the work and a lot of the change in these spaces is gonna have to be driven at the local level. We can set the tone at the top, but at the local level, if it breaks down, you know, we have some local communities that really don't like the state or the governor, and so it's really, you know, we need to be figuring out how to replicate models where things have worked and where we have been able to make some progress. I am gonna hand it over to Loretta. I'll tell you all a little bit more about the process, but I wanna give you a chance to introduce yourself too, and add anything else you'd like to. Real quick, we are recording right now. If there's anything you don't want recorded, I can pause the recording. Or if you think about it after the fact and you say, oh man, I called out like 10 of my cousins, I didn't mean to do that, I feel bad about it, like we can edit it out. We're very much committed to informed and prior consent before we publish anything. But again, we need to do that before kind of we put it out there. And to the extent that anybody is watching this after the fact, or that we have anyone who is a member of the media, we do ask that those people commit to in prior review and consent of the people that you're quoting or covering in this space as well. So now I will hand it off to Loretta.
My name is Loretta Miranda. I am a descendant of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians right down the street, so happy to be near home and with you all. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come to this regional hearing. I serve as the Deputy Tribal Affairs Secretary and Special Counsel for the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs. I've been with the office for about 3 years now. And as Christina mentioned, this is our first regional hearing of 2024. Out at the front, we have a map of locations that we have been and that we're planning to go. And those are tentative, so we can work around if there's any tribe that would like to host. We are more than happy to accommodate our travel schedule. And also at this time, I would like to introduce our emotional support that is with us today. These conversations tend to get pretty heavy. We do talk about a lot of you know, our community trauma and personal trauma stemming from genocide. And so with these meetings, we don't want it to be kind of like you're here from 1 to 3 and go on, go home, like re-traumatize, you're fine. That's exactly the opposite of what we want to do with this process. We want to be able to provide the tools needed to help process these conversations and be as supportive as we can be. And so to that end, we partnered with the California Consortium of Urban Indian Health, who has connected us with Raymond Cortez, Wayne Cortez, and he is a member of Torres Martinez and serves as a peer specialist for the Riverside San Bernardino County Indian Health Program.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Wayne Cortez. I am a tribal member from Torres Martinez. My family is Alice Lopez. I come from a Garcia family and also from the Andreas family. So I am a peer support specialist for Riverside San Bernardino Indian Health. I do work with the youth, Native youth, trying to help them make that connection back to their culture. You know, I'm also a substance abuse counselor. You know, again, just trying to give back, just trying to, you know, trying to stop that
thank you again to Agua Caliente. I feel like I'm like hosting something now because I'm walking back to my chair. But I want to thank the Agua Caliente and Band of Cahuilla Indians for providing this amazing lunch that we had as well, and the space. I'll turn it back over to Christina. Oh, you also will notice that I'm wearing many hats. I'll be taking pictures. If you do not want us to use your photograph, and I tend to take a lot because I'm still learning, so I tend to take them during the introductions. And so if you don't want us to use your photo, just pull me aside, and I'll make sure that doesn't happen.
Great. I also want to acknowledge Jason, who's here, who's helping us with research and writing. And if there's anything that you would like to learn more about, I'll stand up, or that you'd like him to look for, that's a really big piece of what he's been doing. We've had him running around the state pulling indentured records from different courthouses and counties, because they don't make it easy to find these records, and sometimes there's only one or two and they're handwritten. So if there are specific pieces of the history that you all feel is missing that you'd like to have access to, he can go ahead and pull those as well. So I'm gonna very quickly go into kind of where we're at, what this process is, what it isn't, which it can kind of be a lot of things, but it can't be everything. And then what we usually do in these spaces is we go around and introduce ourselves so we know everybody who's in the room. And at that time you can either say anything that you'd like to, that you prepared to say, or you can just introduce yourself if you don't feel comfortable speaking at that time. Really what we do with the listening sessions is we try to have a safe space for people to kind of share whatever they're thinking about. So we also do have some principles for respectful meetings. I won't go into them in detail, but it's basically treat others as you'd like to be treated unless you like being treated poorly. Don't say anything that you would probably regret later. Try not to personally call out individuals or institutions or tribes. We welcome constructive and critical thinking in these spaces, but we don't want this to be a space where people are, completely on blast and don't have the space to defend themselves. So, what the Truth in Healing Council process is that, as I mentioned, the governor apologized to California Native peoples, but really understood at the time that you can't just have an apology and walk away, and that really an apology is an invitation to a constructive conversation and constructive actions, understanding that for an apology to really be felt, those actions can't just be whatever you guess needs to happen or whatever you think needs to happen based on your perspective as a non-Indigenous person, a non-Native person. I'm using those interchangeably. I'm sorry if that's uncomfortable for people. I typically will say Native, but I'm sensitive to the fact that people identify differently. But so that oftentimes what has happened throughout history is we've seen government actors attempt to do things that they think are in the best interest of Indian people without actually talking to Indian people or understanding what Indian people even want or feel like is the worst thing. And so what we've tried to do with this process is, around the apology, created this thing called the Truth in Healing Council. It's a council of all California Native Americans, irrespective of status, meaning if you're a member of a federally recognized tribe, if you're a member of a non-federally recognized tribe, if you're not a member of any tribe, if you're an Alati, all of that, you're all equal as descendants of the genocide. It's also open to non-California Native people, but as allies and really with deference to the California Native voice, experience, history, and really wanting to make sure that people who are engaging as allies are not taking up space that's intended for California Native people to have voice. We also defer to elders, and so where elders really are trying to have the center of the room, we would like to defer to that. Again, really the process as it's created is intended to be a space for everybody to think through what it has meant for them, their families, their ancestors, to get to this point. Really what we're hoping to capture is a line of, this is what happened at the creation of the state, to where, who am I now as a person? How am I expressing myself as a Native person in California? What do I think are still issues, and how is that tied to what happened in the beginning? And so with that, there is a governing council of 12 members and 4 alternates from regions throughout the state. And they really are guiding the direction of how are we deploying this, what's gonna be in the final report, what kind of deliverables do we wanna see out of this. And the final report will be shaped over the next year based on all of the feedback, all of the research that's been done over the past several years. And will be put out to community to say, hey, does this look right? Does it not look right? Do we need to reframe it? Over the summer, right? We will be holding a number of day-long summits based in issue areas so that we can really hone in on specific things that we're seeing as common across different communities throughout the state. And so that where we think we're hearing, or we know what we're hearing, want to make sure that we have the opportunity to hear from experts, hear from individuals, understand whether we're capturing it correctly or whether we're completely off base before anything goes into the draft report. But those summits will be based on general issue areas like culture and community, elders, things like that. We also have subcommittees, and those subcommittees look at specific populations or specific issues that have kind of overarching significance. So for example, I said elders is one. That goes across kind of all of our issue areas. So how are elders engaging with resource collection? How are elders engaging with language and archives and gathering? Same thing with youth, they have their own subcommittee. But we also have a number of other subcommittees, for example, status and identity. So where people lack status for some reason because of either termination or lack of recognition or because of disenrollment, what are the things that are preventing them from fully expressing themselves and feeling like they have parity in Indian country with all California people and are able to feel good about that? And how can we create recommendations that will help them feel whole? So that group has its own facilitator from kind of an ally agency in the Newsom administration, but who's completely impartial and is just gathering the feedback with the idea of trying to like cultivate this body of feedback and create constructive recommendations that can make their way into the report as well. So with that specific example, how does that lack of status interact with educational opportunities, grant opportunities? How does it interact with your ability to gather or access sacred spaces? So that is one kind of big example that's come up a lot in the context of this work. Several subcommittees are constantly open, so if you feel like you'd like to join one, please talk to Loretta and we'll get you the link to sign up to one of them. And I said the report, there will be a draft report out next year for the public to consider. So we'll still be going up and down the state to make sure that everybody has access to that and can work through and talk through and workshop it. But along with that report it'll be the narrative and the story that we're hearing from community up and down the state. So whether that's a history of genocide or a history of excellence, we don't have an agenda here. I think it's based on, our agenda is for California people to get some cool stuff. But in terms of the overall story, if there are communities that feel like we've been harping on this genocide thing too long, we need to just talk about what great people we are and have been and continue to be, and like why that was so threatening to the newcomers, that's a story that we are happy to tell as well. So if there are heroes in your community that you want to uphold and uplift, this is the space for that as well. The report will also have recommendations, and so those recommendations are intended to be recommendations that are actually doable within the next 5 to 10 years, not just kind of pipe dream recommendations that might not make sense because you can't do them under the law. Like really, like there's all of these statutes that don't make sense and don't include tribes, and so how do we do that? Like we need to amend that. There's this funding thing that has been really great, but it needs to be like tripled, or it needs to be 100 doubled. Sorry.
Thanks, make up words.
Yep. It needs to be multiplied by 100, sorry.
109, right? 109 tribes?
Well, you know, let's say it's like, you know. So, I think that's the type of thing that, the two things in conjunction are going to be really important, because the narrative is the thing that is going to reframe how people view all of this. The nuance, the complexity, the culture, the diversity, the stories, the loss, all of it, the humanity. And the recommendations are going to be the things that the state, private partners, funders can work on from the perspective of Native people. So that probably is still pretty confusing, but anything else that I missed? Okay. In these listening sessions, we always hold space first for local California Indian people. And so if there's anybody from the region that wants to speak first, or wants to speak ahead of everyone else, we do that. And, oh, that's the thing I want to talk about. We also, they are not here today, but they're here during our regular quarterly meetings. We have a documentarian that we're working with who has been documenting the process. And so he will be probably at our next quarterly meeting in Sonoma. But he'll be down here at some point again too. We'll be in Santa Ynez in May. And so if folks want to go to the beach-ish, he'll be down there, and if anybody has a story they want to tell him, we'd love to capture that as well. The intent with having the documentarian help and follow and also help train up Native potential filmmakers is to create that capacity for our own storytelling, but also to capture this process, to capture the stories in real time, and to create, similar to Dawnland, a little bit of a movement around this work that people can see, understand that you can just, you just have to start, and create a bit of momentum around the report and the recommendations so that people can see exactly what's happening here and how they can plug in and help. So I will stop there, and everybody can introduce themselves, I think. Yeah. You can start here. And again, you can say anything you'd like to say at this time, or you can also just introduce yourself, whatever you want to do.
Cool. Well, everybody knows who I am. I'm Torres Martinez also. Desert Cahuilla. I'm also on the educational subcommittee, so if you have any questions about education, later on I'll review what exactly the educational subcommittee is doing, so look forward to that.
Hello, I'm Mary Levi, a retired teacher from in the San Bernardino area.
Do you want to say what you're working on right now?
I am, well, we both have been working with a lot of different school districts and with ethnic studies coming up, and we've been working with the Native curriculum and making sure that there is accurate, which is, you know, we've, after 40 years in education, we've always been looking at accurate curriculum for Native American students, just publicly. I mean, because ultimately, we want all of our students to understand and know about Native people accurately, not just what has been out there. And so we've been working on that. That's about it.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
Good.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Mingus. I'm with the Indigenous group, and I'm also a Gabrielino Tonga Nation out of the Los Angeles area.
My name is Stacy Villalobos. I'm descendant of the Miranda people from Jalisco, Mexico. And I'm a facilitator for a nonprofit called the Healing and Reconciliation Institute. So we also watch that film and share it with the people that take our community education program. So it's exciting to be here, and I'm just here to be to listen and be in solidarity as a Native in diaspora on Native land. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Frank Ruiz, and I am a descendant of the Yaqui and Zapotecan tribes. I am the Salton Sea and California Desert Program Director for Audubon, California, and I am an ally to the local tribes working on public lands, protecting areas for conservation, for cultural and religious significance, and I am so flattered to be here just to listen.
I'm Nikolaos Maximos. I'm Greek. My family came over after World War II, and it's horrible what happened in America. And really, I hope Manhattan is given back or do something. They really ripped off. That was the biggest theft, I think. And I hope something's accomplished there in Manhattan. Is there someone else?
There you go.
My name is Joseph Ryan. I'm a travel member here from Agua Caliente. I just got the flyer in the mail, and I just want to come here as a message. Learn some new maybe.
Grace Duran, my husband Joseph Duran. Just the fact that it's a Truth and Healing Council, our daughters are from 5 different nations, and we're just curious to find out what's going on.
My name is Robin Bishop. I'm from Riverside County Public Health. Our purpose is to make sure that we have an equity focus and we're serving all members of the community, not just certain populations. So we make sure that our emergency response is equity pieces, and I'm on the SoCal Tribal Emergency Managers group also. I think it's important to make the relationships and hear what you think the social drivers of health are and how that affects you versus somebody else driving that narrative. I think it's important to be able to write to you to actually have a discussion and say this is really what's happening.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Patty Garcia. I'm the Tribal Affairs Program Manager for California Department of Parks and Recreation. I just started in December. I came from here in Agua Caliente. I used to be the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for Agua Caliente. Worked here for 17 years, and I'm happy to be here today to see some familiar faces. And I'm here to listen to what everyone has to say, and I want to be of service to all the tribes in the state of California and help improve relationships and access to resources on state parks lands.
Hi everyone, I'm Diana Rosas. I'm with the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy. I serve as a tribal liaison, and that's how I heard about this meeting. I'm really happy to be here and to hear everyone's story. Thank you.
Me, and that too, Sean Milanovich, Nehinsakina, Ekutuskana Hawa, Cahuilla. I am a member of the tribe here from Agua Caliente, and I have a lot of concerns, so I want to go ahead and start. As Robin mentioned, the health of our Native community, our health and our wellness is is our #1 concern. In Cahuilla, that's represented by the word Hovash. Hovash means good health and wellness. And because of the state that we're in, our wellness is down, especially with our youth and our younger ones. And we need to do more to take care of them. We need to do more to help them. And that's from the state, from the federal, but really from the tribe. And you know, my elders said that we've lost a lot. That might be so, you know, but we're standing here today, we're living, we're breathing, we have that connection, so we can take care of our youth, our family, our community. Creator, Amna. You mentioned earlier, you know, what is it that makes the tribe stand out? It's our connection with Amna. And we still have that connection. Amna is the greatness of all things, and we were created by Muka and Temeyawe, but it's Amna who we look up to, who we pray to. We ask for guidance and we ask for help. I want to say, you know, in 1852 we signed the treaty over at just southwest of here at the village of Tehuku. And we had many people sign that treaty. Cahuilla people, Cupeño, Serrano, Luceño. But that treaty wasn't ratified. None of the treaties were ratified in 1852. Those 18 treaties that were created, that were sent to the United States Senate, they were called for, and the Senate leaders at that time decided not to do anything with them. They decided not to approve them. But but on our end, on the Native people side, we adhered to those treaties. We did what we were supposed to do. We were kind. We were living in an oppressed world, but we did what we could to honor those treaties. I mean, the invaders, they continued to strike at us. So we would strike back, but nothing was ever done to resolve that. And our people suffered much. We gave up a lot. We gave up a lot. We lost a lot. And because of that, we're here today. We're not feeble. We're not meek. We're able-bodied. We're strong-minded. We have generation, over thousands of generations behind us that are standing here with us today. Our relatives want us to be here. It's a pity we don't have more relatives right here with us today. I'm sorry for my voice. I have laryngitis. And I sang for my auntie the other night. I lost my voice, but I thought it was important to be here. I said, there's not a lot of people here. Why? I think it's because on the part of the Truth and Healing Commission, there was a lack of, there was a failure to notify the people in sufficient time.
I found out about it the day that I was driving up to the wake on Friday night. That shouldn't be. We need more time to plan for this. I think we should have another meeting here again. And give us more time. I know that there's another meeting over in Torres Martinez tomorrow evening, but there has to be more time to let people hear about it. We talk about our kids. Our kids are our future. We want them to have a beautiful life. We want them to be happy and sufficient. We want them to have a beautiful relationship with Creator. We want them to know that they're loved, that they're taken care of. But times are challenging. Times are difficult right now. A lot of kids don't have that. A lot of people in my generation, it was in my dad's generation, they burned the big house down, the ceremony house. And so with that, our tribe decided that the elders said that they were no longer going to speak the language. They were no longer going to share the songs. They weren't going to tell our history. They weren't going to tell you who your grandmother, your great-grandmother, they weren't going to share who your genealogy was. We missed out on a lot. I kept asking my grandmother for years and years. My grandmother, Laverne Miguel, she was on our all-woman tribal council. She said, Sean, you know what? When I went to school, I was beaten. I was humiliated because of who I was, because I'm Indian. So I ran from it. I wanted to go to a place where I wouldn't be terrorized, I wouldn't be threatened. And look, I didn't want you, I didn't want your father to go through these things, so I did not share anything. We were also instructed not to share anything when the house burned. So that's a lot of trauma that we face. It gets into your psyche. Who are you? Who am I? What are we doing here? That's what I grew up wondering. Who the hell am I? But yet, I'm a member of this tribe. What does that mean? We have no language, no songs. Nobody's telling history. I didn't understand it. Then, as time went by, people started coming out and sharing about the language. Auntie Lucille Toro, she was the first one that was sharing the language with us. And Uncle Biff, Andreas, he would share the songs with us. My daughter, Gina, she's 22. She goes to school at San Francisco State. She's going to graduate in May with a degree in film and a degree in Native Studies. And she's proud of who she is. She's Cahuilla. She's Agua Caliente. But when I took her over Christmas break, when I took her to our museum that just opened up, she goes, Dad, you know, my name's not on the wall. And I'm not an enrolled member of the tribe. I'm just a descendant, but according to this, I'm not even a California Indian. I feel terrible. I feel terrible for my daughter because the tribe does not recognize her as that way. The museum does not recognize her. I know she feels this way. It hurts so bad. I want to fight for her. All the kids that are in that same position, all the adults that are in that same position. Cahuilla, I know that. Nobody can ever take that away. But when it comes down to it on a piece of paper, it does matter. It does matter. You know, in a sense it does. We have our connection with Creator. But for the rest of our community, even to have a voice, sometimes you need that piece of paper. You need a freaking card. It shouldn't be that way. We talked about access to sites, access to places, to prayer, for prayer, to pray, access to cultural sites, to cemeteries. Our land has been divided up. It's been swallowed up by everyone else that's here. And if we say one little thing, oh my God, they get so grumpy about it and they start swearing at you. And it was last week, I went to go talk down in Imperial Valley in opposition to Hell's Kitchen, the geothermal lithium plant. And I mentioned that this Governor Gavin Newsom wants to make this valley, not Imperial Valley, not the Coachella Valley, but Lithium Valley. He sees a large onslaught of, we can help the community, but the Salton Sea and that whole area right in there is sacred to us. We get our power and our energy from there. The sea is part of our creation stories. It's in our songs. It's in our oral narration. But yet you want to suck it up. When I say you, the people who want, all these investors, and all these people from the outside, and I know Torres Martinez wants to invest in lithium. But when we're talking about making the whole area a lithium extraction site, that's terrible. We're going to just wipe away. We're going to extract all the life from that sea and the surrounding areas. On the northeast side of the sea, that's where we would send our medicine men that were in training. We would go right there. That's where they would go. But that site is all private property, and you go over there. You better watch out. There's people with rifles over there, and so you can't go there. But there's the mud pots that are there. You eat those mud pots. Vino Siva used to tell us that, the sea is alive, and so by looking at the belching water, by that water coming up, that was sacred. He said the people would eat the mud that was coming up. You eat the mud, and it'll help you. It'll give you energy. It'll clean you. But these sites we don't have access to these sites. When I went with an elder, Carmen Lucas, and I'd heard about this from a long time ago, but it was so sacred. You just can't go there by yourself. Someone needs to take you there. So I waited until my auntie took me. But I was telling her about what Albino had said about eating the mud. And so we went to the mud pots, and we ate from it, and we swallowed it, and we prayed, and we thanked Creator. And part of our story, our creation story, talks about putting inside these water bodies, there's the good energy, and there's this bad energy. But this is the good energy that's there. Some of the old ones told some of the anthropologists otherwise, because they don't want people bothering the sea, but the sea's good medicine. We know that the fault line's right there. We've always known it. But it's still, there's much more right there. When the world was created by Mocha and Temayawa, there was these places of energy that still remain, these places of power that remained from the very beginning when the earth was created. And that is one of those places. So to be able to have access, continue access and away from all the outsiders, that's what we need. And when you think about the healing, to be able to walk on these sites that are closed off to you, it makes you feel good, it empowers you, knowing that your ancestors have been there, they prayed there, they've gone there. Now you're doing it. You're continuing that tradition. You want to bring your children there. I've taken my children to the sea since they were born. We always go there to pay homage to the water, to offer up some tobacco and to sing a song. You know, when we go out to the Colorado River, when we go down to the Pacific Ocean, we pray and offer songs. It's just something that you do. I want these way to continue, but there's only just a select few are doing these things today. I want all the young people know about this medicine and these ways. I want them to do this too, to understand. The Creator is our source of power, or our source of energy. By yourself, by myself, I'm nothing. I'm just bones, skin. But with the Creator, I'm so much more. With all my relatives here in this room, we come with a voice, and we come with good thoughts. And there's one more thing I wanted to say. Looking at the governing council for the Truth and Healing, I noticed there's 3 Cahuilla. One of them is a Kwame, and then there's a Lucenio. The Cahuilla are one of the largest populations here in Southern California, but we're not even on part of that council. I think we should be a part of that council or be able to participate in that council and have more of a voice. Achima. Who more is going to talk? This council is, I wasn't really sure. I was just coming today. So when they asked me for prayer, I said no, because my voice, Creator God, asks to help us all. Pray for all the ones that came before us, all the ones that are here, and all the ones that will become. We pray for healing. We pray for Hovash, for well-being. Know that my ancestors have not died in vain, and something good will come about of this. So I just ask for guidance for the people here today. My elders for speaking and sharing. Mr. Levi, who's been a huge proponent council for some time now. I pray for his health, for his wife, Mary, Creator, that you help them. Pray for all the people, all the underserved communities here in the valley, all the tribal communities, grandfather. We have a lot of work to do, but we need to come together, put aside our egos. As our kids that are the future, we need to start right now to move forward. My grandmother suffered. I got to see that. My great grandmother Rufina, she was just crying. I don't want any more suffering like this. I know you gave us a beautiful world with so many gifts, such as our water. Thank you for that, Paul. But I just want to say thank you for everything that you give us and helping us be mindful, help us be aware, Creator, of all the blessings that you give us, and all the opportunities. And remind us that we're strong people, that we care, and give courage to those that need it, Creator. Pray for our leaders, Creator. I hope.
Yeah, thank you.
We have one more person to introduce themselves. Right now, is that okay? We can give you a minute.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Anyone else like to say anything, speak, or ask any questions? And I think we're happy to come back again too. So, Loretta will be in touch to follow up as well.
I do want to speak to that just a little bit. This was, a lot of our meetings, we planned them in between our schedules, and this one came together really quickly. So I do recognize that this one, I think we had the flyer out maybe 3 weeks at most ago. And so we definitely do recognize that, and I apologize. And so I think we are, Christina and I are a roadshow. So if we can just get a date further in advance, then we're more than happy to come back. And although I represent the state since I work for the governor, but I appreciate you bringing it to the Senate, please. And thank you.
Thank you. I'm on the status and identity, and I remember I spoke to you then, right about being on the committee, but yeah, even through the committee, we never heard about it. If it wasn't shared, but we didn't get any notification of it. And so I don't know, but thankfully Carmen said something so I could be here today. But yeah, I think we need a lot more people here, and I know there's a lot more people that do have concerns, so I would suggest, yes, we do have another meeting.
I have a question. From an equity standpoint, especially in the Eastern Coachella Valley, most of our people are in the agricultural or service industry. So a 9-to-5 meeting confinement makes it very difficult for those to participate. Not to mention that we have children that are in school. And when I was in the nation, we had to accommodate that. So is there a possibility that perhaps that this meeting could take place within the evening hours or on the weekends to accommodate the specifics of this particular population? Because especially when you come out to this eastern part, transportation, there are so many equity barriers. I don't think people really have a full understanding very much in the rural areas. They think of us as a very major urban population. And we do have those, those populations. However, the majority of Riverside County is not that. And there are some very long, there's people that would like to participate. I'm sure Fort Mojave members would like to come up. Santa Rosa, a lot of the tribal nations would like to come. And then, what I can do to help leverage, I have a vast network of CBOs, FBOs. I meet with the emergency managers for Southern California Tribal on Friday. What is it we can do to help springboard the messaging that you need to get out and leverage these relationships we have to make them bigger? When I teach, one of the things I teach is really the premise of anything, whether it's occupational or personal, is those relationships, those touch points, and being able to see someone and those cultural sensitivities. So I'm just putting that out there.
Sure. So that's something that we heard early on and that we've been mindful of because also of the fact that we've got a lot of people in our community who are not members of federally recognized tribes, and so even tribal councils of those tribes can't make meetings unless they're on the weekends or after work hours. And so we try to accommodate and be as flexible as possible. Typically what we'll do is try to have at least one virtual convening per month. We should probably get those on calendar too. And that's to make sure that we can, and we usually do that around 5 p.m. So that we can capture people after work hours. And then with our quarterly meetings, we do it over a span of a few days so that if people are able to come on a Friday and their work will accommodate that, like for example, if they're a member of the tribal council or they work for the tribe and the tribe wants to send them on during work hours, they can do that. But then we'll carry over in the region to a Saturday so that people who couldn't make it on the Friday can also come to that. So for example, tomorrow, the reason we have the different hours for today and tomorrow with places that are relatively close to each other is so that if there were people who couldn't make this kind of afternoon time, that they could come after work tomorrow and enjoy a meal, and also if anybody here doesn't quite know what to say yet and wanted to come and say something again, we've had times where we'll do kind of a week in a place. So we do that in Los Angeles. And we had people who kind of followed around the whole time because every meeting was a little bit different, and they thought about different things and they wanted to bring up different issues that they thought needed to be addressed, or different pieces of their personal history, or different pieces of the things that they thought were good ideas that there should be more of. So really love the suggestion, and encourage you all, like, even if we're not in the region and there's a time or a place that looks like you'd like to join, these are open. We do, again, try to defer to the local community, given that people might not be able to travel all over the state, and we want to make it as easy as possible. But also, as we plan a follow-up convening here, if there are suggestions about how to make that more accessible, we're happy to take those as well. With the caveat that we've moved away from doing hybrid meetings because it's a very strange, and maybe some of you have seen this in actual just like regular hybrid meetings, but it's hard to convey the energy in the room across hybrid. And then with the hybrid piece, they're not seeing the energy in the thing that's happening. You may be ignoring them. They're getting frustrated, and then we have kind of a breakdown of communication. So we're pretty much full virtual, full in person at this point, but happy to do that. And then as far as leveraging your partnerships, I think in terms of, if you want to give Loretta your contact and she can share our flyers and things, it's helpful to have people here with the caveat that we want to make sure that allies are coming as true allies versus, taking up space for, California Native people. And so we welcome and encourage allies to come, and to also spread the word within their contacts and communities, to the extent that they have good relations with some of the local tribes who'd like to engage with this work. So can definitely, I think you should be in touch for that. And then also as we move forward with the recommendations, if there are things that you or your contacts are seeing that could be beneficial for the California Native community, that you think there should be more of, we can incorporate those into the recommendations as well. So, an example is like, I don't know what a good example is, but let's say I'm a CBO and I'm noticing that it's really challenging like there's not enough capacity for tribes, or that there's not enough capacity to take on land, or there's not enough capacity for, you know, land management. Like, those are things that we can put in.
And that's just being an Indian. Those are issues, because we are Indians. Whether or not we feel it, that's how we are seen. So, I always wondered what that meant with the BIA. Blood quantum. Isn't that weird? That no one else in the world is computed and examined to the milligram of what they are. And if they are enough of that blood, they do not get assistance. They are not seen. My grandma lived to be 98 years old. She came from the Pueblo Revolution that happened in Texas. And they moved and ran for their lives to California. My grandpa has a similar story for the Apache Nation. They too were hunted down by the government, and they ran to California, which I'm grateful because I would not be here. They saved us, and now the government is actively trying to find out where we are, because we still are an enemy to the state. We did not sign treaties as an Apache Nation. We don't even have a reservation, but we have a cemetery that gets desecrated. We are state recognized, but what does that give us? I worked for Olivedo, the superintendent of the BIA in Palm Springs and Agua Caliente. And with my time with her, I saw there was a lot of issues in Native country. Things that are literally within our reach and out of our reach. Why? Because our hands are tied, because of policies, and because of people in the state that will not listen, will not give us a seat at the table, will not even let us in the room. We have no sage in the Riverside County because it's been picked and taken and not respected. We have no medicine that we can freely go pick at the Indian Canyons because it's all gone. They picked it off. Nothing has been safe. There is no teaching and respect of that. And spirituality for us, and that was his way out. He saved enough money, and when he was 18, he went and he adopted his siblings. He tried to keep the family together. Now, unfortunately, when my grandma passed away, she was smart to have her papers with her. She had a lot of papers of the past history, because my grandma is Capeño, and we came from Warner Springs in California, where the governor in the 1800s evicted us from our home. So we are the Agua Caliente tribe of Warner Springs, Cahuilla, Capeño. And we have no land, no reservation. It's private land. We can't go there and access the hot springs, the place that we call home, where we were created. So I find it very hard that the government, the governor can issue an apology, but not follow through with an apology. Because you see what happened with Section 14 and how the other city officials ruined all the land there, all the buildings. They removed and evicted them. And now you have what's happening in California. The governor is giving reparations to those individuals, but yet what happens to the reparations, or even a genuine apology and let's make it right. We don't get that. But those people, those African American descents, they get that right. They'll get those millions. While we have to suffer to try to find where our next meal is, how to get gas in our car, where our kids are gonna go to school, if CPS is gonna bother them at school. Why? Because they're Native. And they're always gonna be targeted. Always. Because that is the #1 wanted children in America. Because we are the rarest. It was designed to help us, but does not really help us. We have programs that are designed that do not help us. What Agua Caliente of Warner Springs needs is to get federally recognized so we can get those assistance. But the fact that that has not happened in Congress, and it probably will not happen, because who takes care of Indian problems? No one. What was the saying? Kill the Indian, save the man. It's still going on. I have anxiety sending my children to school, not knowing if there's gonna be an emergency, someone's shooting the school around, or in the nearby neighborhood. Not only that, I don't trust the teachers, I don't trust the administrators, I don't trust the school district, because none of them have had pure good intentions for our children. But what I am proud that Agua Caliente has stepped up, and they have told Palm Springs Unified School District that we do need a voice. So within this past year, we've had the bird singers come to the schools and teach songs. And so my son can feel like I'm not the only one with the braid. He's not gonna be called a girl anymore because he has a braid. People aren't gonna tease him anymore to cut his hair because he has a braid. Our medicine is in our hair, is our connection to the Creator. It's sacred. But yet, I've had those experiences where his hair's been cut. He's had issues and not being protected by the school, and other kids pulling his hair, throwing him around, putting stuff in his hair. That's psychological and spiritual damage to us beyond repair. So something like that needs to be implemented. Our hair is sacred and it should be protected. As well as we need more grants and funding to assist the state or not recognized tribes or individual Indians, allottees or trustees. And we need to put out more programs such as healthcare, housing, and for food. Also, I believe we need a big program, like you know how we have Meals on Wheels. We need to have that for our elders. Not just for meals, but for a conversation, for some healing, to move forward, to share. Because time is short, our time is now. And I thank you guys all. Richmond.
Anyone else like to speak?
Yeah, first of all, what Sean was saying earlier, he's absolutely correct. What this young lady is saying is absolutely correct. Because you got two different spectrums. And you get to see a good level of spectrum between both of them and what they spoke about. But on that note, one thing I want to say is, not because we're here at Agua Caliente, but one thing I want to say is that Agua Caliente does do a great job at understanding who they are as a people, and then serving as a model for other nations in California and what to achieve to. And what I mean by that is, when they built that museum, the tribe spent well above their budget, millions and millions of dollars, to go the extra mile to preserve the artifacts that were there at that site. Not only to preserve them, but to build a museum right on the location, so that way they can understand the identity of their people and tell their story as a community. And what that does for the Agua Caliente people is it gives them a solid foundation to understand where they're from and who they are and where they're going. But it does more than that. What it does is it serves as an example to all nations in California, federally recognized and non-federally recognized, what to strive for. And this is a great beneficiary of self-reliance for this particular tribe. And I see now, more than ever, more tribes working towards that, spending their dollars into capturing their culture, educating their people, and more importantly, educating the other tribes of who we were and where we're going, because that's what it's all about. Because we all know that genocide existed, and we lost a lot of our culture. We lost a lot of our everything. So as a people, how do you save all that? Because as you know, Native people are oral people. You know, we didn't sit down and hit the printing press 500 years ago. You know, our stories were told from generation to generation, and when we lost those people, we lost the whole connection of who we are. Everything. Now, luckily, there's been people in our communities have saved that oral tradition and have taught young people, and young people taught young people to where we have some of the traditions back today in the language and the songs and a lot of stuff that we see today. So again, I point out Agua because they put their money where their mouth is, let's put it that way. They invested the dollars with extra money, they could have saved it. So that's one part there. The other part that I want to make a reference to is the struggles with non-federally recognized tribes in California. It's exactly what this young lady said. It's a struggle for non-federally recognized tribes. It's a struggle, it really is. And I know this for a fact because I'm Garabino Tonga. I mean, first of all, we were wiped out, and then when they, you know, I say we went to 4 processes of genocide when there's 3 in California. We went to 4 because they found oil in our land, and then when we're coming back, and they kicked us out again because there's oil. To this day, there's I don't know how many hundreds or a couple thousand active oil rigs still in Los Angeles County. You know, so to understand that particular area, I truly understand the fight of state recognized tribes and the fight with federally recognized tribes. But understanding all of that puts together through archaeology, and that's where I'm a big fan of. That's who I am. You know, I wasn't put in this earth to sing bird, wasn't put in this earth to do anything else, but my gift to my community is digging into that dirt. That's what I do, that's what my son does, that's what my nephews do, that's what we do generational. I'm like a generational archaeologist for my native communities. And if you want to know the history, you pull out of the ground, you've got tangible history. And then all we gotta do is find the story that goes along with it. So one of the things that I hope that the state could recommend in the future is to put more grants available so that way we can understand the J.P. Harrington notes better. Because from my understanding, there's only a percentage of those that have been gone through. And that there's more funding that needs to be put into those original notes that were got with. Well, first of all, how many of you guys know about the J.P. Harrington notes? You guys know what they are? Show of hands. Okay, see, you see that just a handful of people in the room know what they are, but it has a wealth of knowledge in our history and our culture on a first-hand basis that was recorded, and that if we had more funding, we can teach the native tribes more of who they are based on the actual recordings and actual notes of the J.P. Harrington. So that's something that I wanted to point out as well, as far as healing from the genocide of what we experienced as a native people from all cultures. So with that being said, I'm done.
Thank you.
Who am I passing this to?
Before, I just wanted to note too that some of what we've been thinking about in terms of remedial action is aligned with what you had mentioned about oral history people, and so how do we adjust and modify kind of everything in order to accommodate that? Like, even from my perspective, how do you catalyze so many different languages and give people access to those in a way that actually makes sense for Native people who would pass that down through oral tradition versus, like, if I'm reading a linguist notes, like, that is already a foreign thing that I have to learn, but it's also a foreign way of thinking about it from a Native perspective. So thinking about, like, how do we start re-engineering things to what feels natural for California Indians versus, like, trying to make Western stuff native.
And that's a good point. And I think what it is, another point is, I understand there's so many different tribes in California.
Yep.
And they all identify to themselves. You know, some identify, you know, just like, you know, I'm Gabrielino Tonga Nation. Well, there's 6 factions of Gabrielinos out there. You know what I mean? There's so many different, and each one of them have their own dialect, their own tradition, their own culture, their own ways. And how do you identify that? Because you know, traditionally everybody just puts everybody in one basket and passes it around. Well, that's not what it is. Bottom line is the hard work needs to be done, and the unraveling of the tribes and the cultures need to be respected. That's just the bottom line. There's no easy way around it. And but first of all, understanding that fact is what gets us to that road. And I think you guys understand that. A lot of people understand that, but there's so many people that don't get that. So many people don't understand that. You know what I mean? I mean, just within here in the southern tribes, you got so many different cultures and so many different beliefs that, you know, it kind of like, it meshes, but it doesn't mesh. It's like vinegar and water and oil and water, you know? And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought that point out.
Yeah, and I think even how do you tell the story without oversimplifying it so that a non-native public can learn through kind of steps almost, because when I say California Indian, we all know that's not actually a thing. You know, we're all like different things, and it's all similar, but it's different. And even our neighbors were really different from us. And so how do you communicate that in a way that doesn't confuse people, and that they embrace, and that they start understanding like how amazing this place is because there's so much diversity of people pre-contact and continuing and surviving. Like, that's amazing. But I think the first barrier is getting people to remember that California Indians aren't dead. The second is getting them to understand that California Indian is a made-up term. The next thing is like getting people to understand that regions and the land really dictate culture. And so like, that's a lot harder to understand when the land has been re-engineered, so you can't even, in some places, see what that is anymore. But you can see it through history and through, you know, understanding what the geography was before water was redirected, before cities were built, all of it. So I think like that's another thing that we struggle with too, is like, I think we're stronger together when we can create a collective identity, but that can't come at the cost of our individual, like, land-based identities. And I'm sorry, you had a comment too, and I just totally took us in a different direction.
I'm just gonna read from Wikipedia, my great grandma's saying. So the Cherokee have their trail tears. We also have ours. On the morning of the removal, Rosinda Nolasquez, who was 11 years old at the time, recalled the last moving at Cuba. Orders were shouted in English at the Cupeño. We were so scared, we didn't know what he was saying. We didn't know what was going on. We saw old people running back and forth. We cried too because we were afraid. She recalls the morning when they were trying to ensure that her cats would not be left behind, which she managed to find. In 1903, an article at the Los Angeles Herald described it as such: the springs proved the Indians' undoing. White men wanted them. And now, after years of impatient waiting, they have possession. No matter the legal aspect of the case, the act is deplorable It is one of the saddest sequels to the white man's first notice to the natives on the Atlantic coast to the moon farm. They have been moving on ever since. The headline went, Indians bundled away like cattle to Paula.
Would anyone else like to say anything? Thoughts, reactions, hopes, ideas?
Yes. Sean Milanovich. And second, I'm from Agua Caliente. My father was Richard Milanovich. Dad was chairman for a number of years here. And my mom, she was Turkish. She was a white woman, her name, Sandra Cano. They both had passed on. My dad's mother, Laverne Miguel, and his dad was Steve Milanovich, and he was first generation here in the United States from Yugoslavia. Then for my grandma Laverne, she hails from, her grandpa was Amado Miguel from Agua Caliente. And then there was also Rufina Wellness from Paula, that was her mom. And Grandma Rufina, she walked that Trail of Tears. She was real young, real young. I think she said she was like 5 years old when she had walked that trail. I remember that. I'm going over there. I go to the cemetery a lot. Over in Paula, I have lots of family there and lots of family here. I think it's good to recognize your relatives. Part of my relatives from Paula, Grandma Rafina, her mother was Casilda Wellness. And her mother was Margaret Brennan. Casilda, she was married to Cayetano Wellness. And Cayetano, he was Chumash. And a lot of our histories, because the people moved around a lot, they moved from one village to another village where it was safer, where there was a larger community of native people. And so, but Cayetano, he and his family had moved to LA, and then there was real dispersed there, and so he continued and he found this group where he felt safe at, over at Cuba. And that's what we call Winter Springs, but that's where our people came from. And just knowing the history right there, this beautiful area. As my sister was saying, the people had been moved. We moved from there in 1903. And they had been there since the beginning of time. Now the federal government says they're not recognized. doesn't recognize them as being California Indian, as being Upangawicha. And so what does that do to this right here? You feel bad. You question everything. You question who you are, and you question how you pass on information. Should I tell my children this history? But yes, you should always tell the children the history. Our children are extremely strong and valuable, and we think that they can't understand, won't be able to take it, but remember, Creator gave us everything we needed to take care of ourselves, to take care of our children. So we need to tell even the hard things about who we are and where we come from. We need to tell our story. So that's important. I also wanted to say, about St. Boniface. My auntie, when she went there, and in Velarde, and she was taken there when she was about 5 years old. Her family took her there, and the family took her there because they were hungry, and they didn't have a lot of food. There wasn't much opportunity anyway. Nobody was working, and so the family took her there because they thought that, well, they knew that she would get at least a meal a day. And so they took her there. But once they did that, they never went to go see her. And Annie got separated from her family over the years. And this is what's happened with the boarding schools. That people get separated from their identities, from their families, from who they are, from their language, their culture, from the land, but not on purpose. We need to correct these. We need to bring that circle together. Our people are hurting. My auntie, she had been raped several times by Father Han. And he was the one that was running that school. So these are things that we need to talk about as Native people, as Cahuilla people. We need to share all of these stories with each other. And we need to share them with our kids. That's real important. I don't like this idea that a lot of tribes now follow, and my tribe is one of them. They follow blood quantum. That separates families. Who are they to say who is God? Or who is Cahuilla, who is not Cahuilla, who is Indian, who is not Indian? I think that's crazy that someone can play God like that, even if it is a government, a tribal government. So I think some tribes have bought into that, and I don't agree with that. I know the tribes have the idea, or it's up to them to govern themselves, but that's something that I don't like. They tell who can be a part of it and who cannot be, because it breaks up my family. My family can't always be a part of it. So I feel terrible. My kids feel terrible. Federally recognized tribes and non-federally recognized tribes. I think it's California Indians, we need to band together and stop fighting, but support one another, help each other, love one another. And we all have so much to offer, so much knowledge. Alone, we have this much, but together, it's endless. And that circle just keeps going around and around, and so I think we need to help each other and stand up and back each other more. On the status and identity committee that I'm on, seems like there's been like a lot of, not fighting, but a lot of the people, they're unrecognized, federally unrecognized tribes. And they want access to health care. They want access to other programs that can help them because they are California Indian. They want that help, but they don't have that help. They don't get those resources. So I just think we should all work together more, put aside our differences. We didn't divide ourselves up like that, no. We see each other as family. We're relatives, brother and sister. This is Cahuilla land that we're on right here. And we believe that this land right here, this is where we were created at. The greatness of all things that brought these two energies together. There was Tukmiat the night, and the greatness of things. These two embryos started growing. Muka and Temayawe, they grew and grew. With those embryos, or with these two young men that were growing, they created the world. And then when they created the world, they created people. And then they put those people down on the earth. And where did they put those people? Right here. Right here at the Santa Rosa Mountains, San Jacinto Mountains. So this is the center of the world right here for us. We believe it all started right here. So from the Cahuilla perspective, we're looking at everything out or around us, and everything came out afterwards, but this is the center of the world, and we have been here since the day the sun first rose, even before the sun rose. And so our stories tell us this, our songs tell us this, our language tells us this. We have a lot to offer to our relatives, to our younger brothers, to our younger sisters. But I think of some of the people, my elders, like Auntie Carmen Lucas, who drives all the way over from the Laguna Mountains to come and fight for the Salton Sea, because she knows some of those ceramics that she finds around her house came over from the Salton Sea. And so to see that these investors want to drill holes in and around the Salton Sea, that hurts. That hurts. And this is one of our sacred sites. But yet we don't have many tribes talking about it. Even our local tribes really aren't talking about it. I think we need to do more as a people. We've come a long way. Yes, Agua Caliente is leading the front on a lot of things, but we can still do a lot more. But it's not going to start from the tribe itself. It's going to start in rooms like this with the people. The people have to get the tribe to move. The people have to get the state to move. That's why it's important that we can get as many voices in here as we can, because we need their support. We need their voice.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to say?
Just a quick point. Native people don't need the federal government's permission to be Native people. I just want to make that clear. understand that. You know, for the state recognized tribes, there's like 55 of them listed on the Interest Commission website. Bottom line is, I'm on one of those tribes, I don't need the federal government's permission. I know who I am, I know who my tribe is. We already operate the tribe, we already do this tribe. We may not have the federal benefits, hey, that's okay. Guess what? We don't need the government to tell me who I am. So I just wanted to clarify that, because, you know, like this young lady here, she talks like she has a lost identity. You know, she knows who she is. She's gotta get her people together and communicate as a tribe. And that's just why I wanted to add that, so. I still got, you know, white hair, but I'm not ready to.
I think that's a good point, and I think the way that the recommendations here are gonna be effective and how we've been looking at it is, again, as I mentioned earlier, as descendants of the genocide, every descendant of the genocide is a part of this process. It has nothing to do with whether you're part of a recognized tribe that's recognized by a colonial government, whether you are on an NHC list, whatever it is. It's more a lens of how did you get here, what did your ancestors have to survive, and what are the struggles that you're going through now. And so like, I think even identifying that though is super important, you know, and having the conversation around what do these structures do to an individual who's already been through so much. You know, you hear about how families are being fractured, and it's not always the federal or the state government, sometimes it's our own tribal governments that are doing it in reaction to what the federal government has imposed on them. And so like, blood quantum is a federal thing, it's a non-Indian thing.
Exactly, it's almost like this, because the tribes in themselves are doing it to themselves. Because, you know, you have a tribe, and it gets, half of it gets, or a quarter of it gets per cap, the other half doesn't. Then you get that splitter down the middle. I mean, my brother's from Morocco, but doesn't get per cap. But his cousins do. You know, I'm from Tonga, you know, we don't get nothing, but he's a descendant from Morocco, you know, Nigshakes. So, it's happening now, you know what I mean? Because either you go to the Christmas house that has per cap, or you go to the Christmas house that doesn't. So, bottom line is the way it is, until the tribes recognize that splitter is always gonna be there, that fracture is always gonna be there. It's just gonna get worse and wider.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective for this process, like, I would never want anyone to leave this meeting and say that, you know, we said the tribes need to deal with some stuff. I think it's more like, what can the state do to make those inequities feel less unequal? And so, like, why is there such a big gap between people who have per cap and who don't? Why is there such a big issue here where, like, we've got a ton of California Indian people who aren't being taken care of? And the federal government says it's tribes' responsibility to take care of tribes. Tribes are trying to exert self-governance, but are not, you know, always being inclusive of who they, you know, they have the right to determine their own membership, but also, what does that mean for all of the California Indian people who are falling through the gaps? Because if the feds are disclaiming responsibility, the state hasn't taken responsibility, and the tribal government hasn't taken responsibility, like.
It's creating mental health issues. It's creating a lot of mental health issues. The non-enrolled members to the enrolled members.
Just for the record.
Sorry. My name is Grace Duran. Anyway, I feel that this specific issue is creating mental health issues. I have daughters. I just recently dealt with an ICWA situation where ICWA will get involved with my children who are enrolled, but won't get involved in their half brother. And he's enrolled, and oh, he's got to go to the state. There's nothing I could do, and the tribe won't back that. So there has to get to a point where lineal descendants, I mean, this is first generation lineal descendants, need to be backed by the state, by the government, not just, oh, well, there's nothing that we can do, you know, in regards to helping these children. On that other note, the per capita versus the non-per capita, you know, I have my daughter, she's enrolled climate tribal member. I have another daughter who's Copeño, another daughter who's insane, you know, and Cahuilla, you know, and 4 of the 7 are enrolled, you know, the other 3 have literally mental health issues. It's become, I don't know. It's really difficult to deal with. Okay, for instance, they're going to Unity meeting this weekend in Phoenix, Arizona, and 3 of them are enrolled members. We're doing this native wellness for our native children, but when they turn 18, they're not going to get any money. They're not going to get anything. They get to go to Indian Health Services, you know? And so it's creating mental health issues for our youth. And it has to come somewhere on top. It has to come from somewhere on top, because a lot of it is, it's collective in the tribe. A lot of it is greed. Well, we don't want to enroll more people because we don't want to get less money. Like I sent my daughter to a Klamath tribal member, and just today, as a matter of fact, hey, you should call the tribe. You know, she just moved her back down from Massachusetts. You should call the tribe. You know, what? For my $15 a year check, you know? And so, but she has to work hard while some of my daughters don't do anything, you know? And so it's creating this whole per capita Native American, it's creating mental health issues for other non-per cap members. And it's not just, you know, it's a lot of different tribal members. I don't know, that's a really touchy subject for us in our household, and a lot of other members, as Dr. Milanovich had said. But how do we get people to understand the culture of the land? I asked the question, you know, create a collective identity by how? Letting them know we're still here. We've been here, you know. Native America, North, Central, South, we've been here. So how, people know this, so how do we create that collective identity? How do we? That's the question. More awareness that we're still here, but they know we're still here. I feel like the respect is now being divided by the last presidential term, right? So I feel like the racism and the division is like, you know, I'm on Instagram and I'm like, you know, following these, and it's like, oh, you, what is it, that penny, something, some derogatory slang, and people are like, the racism is, the greater the people get, the higher people get in self-acknowledgement and self-respect, and the greater the degradation and the divisiveness gets, you know. And so it's like, how do we move past that? And yeah, we don't need to be told who we are, you know. Like there's this movement, the Native American, the Mexica, you know, we know who we are, you know, but like, it's like you said, it's different federal versus non-federal. But at the same time, like, how do we get like people, how do we get more of these seats filled? You know, like how do we do that? Most of the natives, I mean, in our community, I'm not gonna like put people up, but a lot of Agua, I'm a youth advocate, and I speak with a lot of social services from the tribe as well, and they're like, nobody comes. You know, we have these events and nobody comes. They don't want that accountability. How do we create our people to become accountable? They want the respect, but not the exposure. Not just that, I live in the Indian Canyons, and it's so difficult because it's like, the Milkish, they don't care that this is our home. They care that they can use the land, you know, and this is, who cares? We don't care. You're driving, you know, 50 miles in a 25 mile zone. You can't park here. You know, who are you? Oh, so what? I don't care who you are. People don't care anymore, you know, and that is where we need to start with that. What type of exposure do we want people to know? Is that we're always gonna be here, you know? And who else was, I wrote all this stuff down. I already talked about, you know, the whole lineal descendant per capita blood quantum. You know, like some tribes, they have petitioned to drop the quantum. Now they have over 5,000 members in some different federally recognized tribes. And yeah, of course they have casinos and gas stations and hotels, but 5,000 members, like I said, my daughter gets a $7, $8 a month check. You know, like another thing is like we live literally at the base of the canyon where the water is coming onto our property. Like, why are we paying for water? You know what I mean? Like, why are any of us California natives paying for water? You know, like these are the issues that need to be talked about in Congress. This is what it is. Like my water pressure is like way over 75 PSI coming out of the freaking canyon, but I gotta pay for water and my water bill's $300 a month. Like this is what I'm talking about, like native wellness. These are issues that need to be talked about. I don't know, we just came back from the Yucatan, and we visited, you know, the Mayan people, and we went to the cenotes, and we swam in the cenote. I mean, the culture is beautiful, and we went to the ruins in Chichen Itza, and you have to pay a tax. Did you know that you have to pay an entrance fee, and then you pay a immigration tax? So it's like, how do we get these people to know that we're still here? Well, you're gonna pay an immigration tax when you're visiting our museums, visiting our historical sites, our Indian canyons, you know, like, but not just that though, the Mayan people of the Yucatan, the Chichen Itza was bought and sold by a white man, by the Milkas. They're not getting per capita for the hundreds and thousands of people that are going to the ruins, you know what I mean? So it's like, how do we set precedents? How do we let the state know? Well, that's what's gonna have to happen, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna have to pay an immigration tax because you're on a sovereign nation, you know? So I just feel that, yeah, the Yucatan is growing and you know, where we were at, it's beautiful. The people are proud, the culture is beautiful, but there's still a lot of poverty, you know? And it's where do, this is the same like California, where does the line draw? How do we get the state, not just the state, but individual tribal members to realize how accountable we need to be for recognition? And, you know, and I don't know. I guess my hopes are to ratify a movement, to start international taxes on reservations, sites, historical museums, and you know, maybe some of them happen, maybe they don't. Again, my point is the people create a collective of being here and will always be here. And that's all I have to say about that. Thanks. Sorry. But I just kind of went way off the subject on lineal descendancy and what
That was all on topic.
Okay.
Thank you, so you appreciate that. And I think you've touched on some things that I've observed going to Australia and New Zealand too, the same thing of like, they don't have the same legal structures we have, but the dominant cultures are like actually embracing some of the change more, which is really, it's such a different thing. And what was interesting is I've been hearing you all talk is like, there were places where I was physically uncomfortable because they have zero discomfort with like blood quantum, zero discomfort with like mixed ancestry, which we all have, you know, like, and so like pride in coming from lots of things, and here it's like we've so internalized the colonization that like we do it to ourselves and we do it to each other, and we're like afraid to be the people that we are. So I really love your points, and I think especially with the immigration view, which is such a great name for it.
That's what it's called. Like, you're either like a Mexican national and you get $20 off where you're an immigrant and you pay $20 more. And so.
Well, and it reminds me too of like,
But
sorry if I'm sharing too
they're
much.
literally coming onto they're coming onto a sovereign nation. They're not in the United States, they're coming onto a sovereign nation, so.
Well, it reminded me, so I've been doing a lot of travel lately, but I just went to Dubai too, and there, you can never become a citizen unless you're part of their like tribal culture. And I was like, this is a tribal nation,
Right.
completely sovereign, completely recognized. They have something the world wants, so they can actually be able to do that, but like, what a neat model of like the entire descent, like the entire population of people who fit this population, the tribal members, benefit from all of this, and people want to be there, and want to spend their money there, and want to live there. And so it's, you know, I think what you're saying is like gonna be part of the key to unlocking this. And what's neat is that Agua Caliente generally has been leading the way in state tax reformation in a way that none of the other tribes are doing yet. And I think that's something that we'd like to put as recommendations, is like, how do we create more of this around the state? And then also add on that, like what you're saying, like a tourist fee or like an immigration fee.
Immigration fee. They're all, I mean, you think about it, most of them are immigrants here.
Well, if you're not
German.
native to this place, you aren't.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, most of them are tourists.
Yeah, we had a tourist here today, came and ate.
Hey, I was just gonna say, where'd he go?
What's up for
I wanted to hear his story. You know, what
They're
kind
charged
of
in the
came
cash.
from? You know, like, he cried.
Did he come?
He paid his dues.
That was the fee, was settler tears.
Just want to say, just thank you, all of you, for, expressing your feelings and all that. One of the things that, for me, I grew up in, again, like a normal, native home, a dysfunctional family. I watched my grandma Alice, for years growing up and, being the person who was a teacher of the language and, explaining the words and the meanings as best as she could. She had broken up English in Cahuilla, and I've seen her go through all that. And as I grew older, and I went through my little ordeal. And one of the things that I started to realize as I started to have clarity in my life is where all this stemmed from. What we're going through is the intergenerational trauma we talk about all the time. How can we make a difference? And it comes from within in the household. To me, I look at that. What part do I play in that? As the education part. Encouraging my kids, to get an education. To beat them at their own game is through pen and paper education. Like minds. Because we survived all them errors. Genocide, boarding school, all that, and we're still here. So we all have a purpose. And there's so much things that were talked about, medicine and this and that, creating a safe space over here. I had the opportunity to sit with quite a few powerful medicine men in my life. I'm young, I'm still young, and I know some of the songs in Cahuilla, but some of them I don't know the language to it. That's something that I was disconnected to. So there's a lot that was said here that it affects me and it applies to my life and my kids. I also have grandkids that are, not as old, but as long as they have that little bit of that blood in them it's still Cahuilla, and I talk about a lot about medicine, the medicine, the laws, the sweat laws, and all these ceremonials, and I started walking that way for ever since I changed my life around. Trying to learn a lot of ceremonials to help me to better my life, so that I can have a better understanding about what we're going through as indigenous people. Living on the reservation, off the reservation. That's how I grew up, Warner Springs and all that. Warner Springs only had 5 families up there. Torres Martinez, and it was scarce. you know, until, gaming came in, and everybody wanted to be Indian. And I seen that era, you know, and, it got kind of complicated, you know, and then here comes the alcohol and drugs again, you know, the mind changers, you know, all the, enrollment cards. So we're like cattle, you know, the government keeping our identity, how many cattle do we have? You think about that, you think about all that stuff growing up, you know, and how it affects our kids, though, you know. So for me, it's always encouraging my kids to get an education, encouraging my grandkids to get an education, you know, and I can feel the hurt, you know, and all that, you know. But, you know, that gratitude, I always think about that gratitude because I wasn't a grateful person before, you know, took things for granted, you know, so I have that, you know, today is that gratitude, just, you know, being able to give back as much as I can, as much as my people allow me to, you know, encouraging the kids, you know, to, you know, find their purpose in life. You know, I talk to a lot of different nations, you know, Dene, Navajo, Cahuilla, you know, Lusania. You know, again, those were all government names. They all had their own tribal names, you know, their family names, you know. So try to teach them a lot of that stuff, you know, as best as I can, and have an understanding. You know. But at the end of the day, I leave it up to, you know, I'm, you know, greater God, you know, to help them, you know, to guide them, protect them. So it's important, when I was asked to come here and help with this helpness, this minded helpness, you know. So I think about that a lot, is that, you know, creating a safe space, you know, a lot of emotions were brought up, and, you know, because you guys were hanging on to that for a long time, you know, talking about it, and the tears that we shed, that's healing, you know, we're healing today. I think about that, you know, all the good words about this land. This land's gonna be here, we're gonna, you know, be just like that sand, and we're gonna mingle into that sand, and we're gonna be gone. So we gotta think about the next generation coming up. So what can we do to help them? You know, ceremonial, bird songs, that's the healing part. You know, we have, you know, and Torres Martinez uprooted on that reservation off and on, banning to TM. And the thing about it is that, you know, nobody wanted to be Indian back then, you know, because of the abuse, you know, because it was hard. You know, and I used to listen to my mom and, you know, my grandma, and they talk in Cahuilla, you know, but they would never talk in public, in Cahuilla, only at home, you know, because it was hard for them, you know, to deal with all that stuff, watching them grow up and banning, picking peaches and apples up there in the orchard, you know, up there, you know, all them years, you know. But I have to make a difference in life now. I have to, you know, I'm a grandfather, you know, I'm a father of 4 beautiful kids, 7 beautiful grandkids. So my thing is that education, you know, I watch Mr. Levi over here, you know, he's a person of the UCLA. I'll go to
We're San Diego State University.
Why are you so offended by
Cal
that?
State San Bernardino.
Okay, beautiful. So he did something, you know, and again, we have all these beautiful minds, you know, but yet, you know, they're in school. So how are they gonna get all this education, all this knowledge that he hangs on to, you know, and they have to go to school to do all that. We don't have a lot of them powerful people on these reservations to wanna teach all that, you know, because they're so being disrespectful. You got gangs on the reservations, you got all of this, you know, new society stuff, you know, where they're not interested in all that stuff now. So we gotta encourage them, we gotta help them find their purpose in life. You know what I mean? So nowadays everybody wants to get paid for that. In all reality, you know, we're supposed to be giving that to them, not having our hand out, you know. So that's where that gratitude comes in, being grateful for what little I know. I don't know much, but I know what I have, I'm gonna give. So again, you know, I mean, I wanna thank you, you know, all of you. So it gives me a topic to talk to, you know, with the kids. You know, I sit at Sherman quite a bit, you know, and help, not just that, but some of my people I talk to at work, you know, all indigenous people, you know, and just let them know what's going on in the community, what we're trying to do and make a difference, you know. So again, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here and holding a little bit of space. And, you know, again, discussion about, we'll call it an altar. So you guys, all your tears are shedding, you know, all that medicine, that, you know, that tobacco, that coyote tobacco, you know, that way you can bless yourself, you know, to wash away all that negativity, all that fear, that, you know, anger, all that stuff. Just give it right back to wherever it came from, you know. So again, I just want to thank you, you know, for letting these years.
I do have some sage. I don't know the rules here, but if anyone likes them, I got some from home. Again, I'm from Morongo, so I had my dad take me out there and gather it all for these meetings. I don't have a lighter, so we're gonna need to call
I got
out. Okay, we're good.
I'm ready. Let's go. I need some.
There's plates over here.
It's a casino. It's not gonna go off.
This much in here all the time. I mean, I've been here for a long time. No, I'll take, you know, I got a card that says I can have Highway, ayahuasca.
I have that one, I got an NXT card.
Yeah, as long as that.
But-
You know, we're filming still.
So I got an NXT card.
Plausible deniability. If they're filming, we don't have it.
Turn to the camera, tell them your business.
So a lot of times people think that, you know, sage, sweetgrass, cedar, all that, you know, northern medicine. One of the most powerful medicines we have right now is sitting in front of you. That's that water. You have it in your faucet, you have it everywhere you go, so you can bless yourself with that stuff. So it's right.
While we wait for the sage, you know, I mean, I've been with these two girls since day one probably, and we've grown. I mean, we were in San Diego, and there was one person, and San Diego has the most reservations, and we had one person show up. So having 9 or 11 of you showing up here, that's pretty darn good. It's a good suggestion to go out to Crit and Fort Mojave and Chimwavy. We really do need to go out there, maybe.
We've been reaching out if anyone has a good contact.
I thought we were sent the newsletters or the meeting dates to all the tribes.
We do.
I mean,
It
the
doesn't
tribal
mean
chairman
we'll
should
put
get
it.
them, yeah. So
I guess
that's
we're
why I'm
asking
wondering
everybody.
where's everybody from down here? I'm like, I'll yell at our tribal chairman tomorrow.
Yeah, well, we're about to tell them that, like, hey, everybody, we've only got a year left, so if you were gonna get in, like.
Well, that's true. Educational wise, because that's what my wife and I do, and especially with James Ramos. Right now, where my wife and I, like I said, we're writing curriculum for ethnic studies, because if you have kids that are in high school, by 2019, they have to take ethnic studies to graduate. And it's African American, Asian American, Latinx, and us guys. And again, there's only 0.002% of the teachers in California are American Indian, let alone California Indian. So again, that's why I'm at Cal State San Bernardino. I kind of am just getting promoted into becoming a faculty member in the Department of Education to teach ethnic studies of the American Indian portion, and also be a field supervisor. And I'm trying to turn CSUSB into a California Indian, American Indian teacher college. So again, because again, we're talking about earlier, it's systematic, it's systemic. You know, so when I was here in Coachella Valley, going to all the high schools, and saying, you're being bullied. Well, if you had an American Indian teacher or American Indian counselor, do you think that bullying would have happened? Every kid said no.